background. This story comes from an anthology of short stories for young people, Free Stories About Human Rights, which celebrates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Each story focuses on a different article or statement that is part of this important United Nations document. In this story, a child who had to leave his home in Africa hopes to make real friends in Ireland, where he now lives. About the author. Roddy Doyle, born 1958, is an Irish novelist, dramatist, and screenwriter, best known for his realistic depictions of Irish working-class life. Doyle spent several years teaching English and geography before turning to full-time writing. Doyle is the author of 10 novels for adults, 7 books for children, 7 plays and screenplays, and dozens of short stories. In 1993, Doyle won the Booker Prize for his novel, Paddy Clark, Ha Ha Ha. Prince Francis, by Roddy Doyle. It was very exciting. The whole class was going to be interviewed, as if they were on television. In fact, they were on television. The camera was in position, at the top of the classroom. Dara was the cameraman. Francis envied Dara. He had wanted to be the cameraman. He had put his hand up. Sir, me! But Sir had chosen Dara. That was okay. Francis didn't really mind. He liked Dara. All right, said Sir. Ciúnas. Francis knew that ciúnas meant quiet in Irish. He knew some other Irish words, too. Buchir meant boy, and lethras meant toilet. We're all set, said Sir. Where's our first celebrity? They laughed and looked at one another. This was going to be fun. One of the girls, Alice, was the interviewer. She was wearing a black dress that had once belonged to her grandmother, and black eyeshadow that made her blink. She had a clipboard on her lap, with her questions. Kevin, said Sir. You're first. Kevin went up to the top of the classroom and sat in the chair beside Alice. How's it going, Alice? He said. They laughed. Alice blinked. Okay, said Sir. Dara, are we rolling? Dara nodded. Yes, sir. Good man, said Sir. And action, shouted the rest of the class. Good evening, said Alice into the camera. And welcome to Back Chat. My name is Alice, and this is my first guest. She was very good, although her blinking was quite strange to look at. It was almost as if she were trying to swim, but using her eyelids instead of her arms. What's your name? She asked. Kevo, said Kevin. And where are you from? Here, said Kevin. My goodness, said Alice. You were born in this classroom? No way, said Kevin. That'd be stupid. Everyone laughed. Sir was laughing too. Where were you born then, Mr. Kevo? Outside, said Kevin. I mean, down the road. I don't know, in a hospital. And what are your interests, Kevo? Football. And? GAA. Ga? Said Alice. What is Ga? Gaelic football, said Kevin. Francis played on the same team as Kevin. He had joined the team when he came to the school 4 years ago, when he was 7. He remembered he had been very surprised the first time he'd played, when one of the boys picked up the ball. Handling the ball was permitted in Gaelic football. In fact, handling the ball was important. Kevin's interview was over. It was Jane's turn. She sat in the chair, in front of Alice. She was wearing a green wig. Good evening, said Alice. Good morning, said Jane. And who are you? Jane. Jane, said Alice. What a lovely name. It rhymes with pain. Take it easy, Alice, warned Sir. It's okay, said Jane. Alice rhymes with malice. And where are you from, Pain? Sorry, Jane. Ireland, said Jane. That explains your green hair. Yes, said Jane. It's the same color as your snot. Hold on, said Sir. He jumped in front of the camera. Stop. Do you mean cut, sir? Dara asked. Yes, said Sir. Yes, cut. He turned to the 2 girls. Girls, he said. Francis was surprised by what had happened. Alice and Jane were best friends. I was only joking, sir, protested Jane. Me as well, said Alice. Payne is my nickname, sir, said Jane. Yes, said Alice. Francis wondered if he would ever have a nickname. He hoped so. He had been here 4 years. He had no enemies, but also no close friends. The other children were quite friendly, but none of them had given him a name that meant strong friendship. Alice and Jane were ready again. And action! Now, Jane, said Alice, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about the real Jane. Well, do you have a pony? No. What about a donkey? Alice was funny. Francis admired her confidence. I like Harry Potter, said Jane. Oh, said Alice. Is he your boyfriend? Francis had read, so far, 3 of the Harry Potter books. The lady in the hostel, Mary, had given them to him. He had read each of them twice. There was a small shelf between his bed and his mother's that he used for his things. The books were on his shelf, his first books in this country. Jane stood up, and Derek took her place. Hello, you, said Alice. Sir laughed, and everybody else laughed. Francis could tell that Derek was embarrassed. Hello, said Derek. And you are who? Derek, said Derek. Derek, said Alice. And tell us, Derek, where are you from? The UK, said Derek. Francis was surprised again. He had thought that Derek, like the other children, was Irish. He certainly looked Irish. He was the only person in the class with red hair and freckles. Britain, said Derek. England, like. You're English, said Alice. I was born there, said Derek. So, yeah, I suppose, he shrugged. How interesting, said Alice. Why did you come here, to Ireland? My dad's Irish, said Derek, and my mom got a job here, so we moved. When? When I was 6. In a plane? No, said Derek. Boat? Do you remember it? Yeah, said Derek. Course, we drove to the boat from our house in London, then the boat, then we drove again, to our house here, like. Francis remembered his own journey here, to Dublin. He had travelled on a train from Belfast, in the north of Ireland. He had seen it since, on a map, but before that he had been on a plane. Before that, there had been a long wait, in a very hot room with no windows, with his mother, and with many other people. Before that, there had been another plane, and before that, a bumpy journey in the back of a truck. When he lay beside his mother, and there was a dusty canvas cover over them, and the other people hiding with him. It was very frightening. His mother sang, but she sounded frightened too. Before that, he remembered walking, a long distance, at night time. And before that, he remembered running. He thought he did. And gunshots. It was a long time ago. He was not sure. Francis? Everybody was looking at him. The chair beside Alice was empty. It was Francis's turn. He stood up. He had been looking forward to this. From where he had been sitting, it had looked like great fun. Now he was not so sure. His legs felt rubbery, and he walked to the chair. Hurry up, Francis. Quiet, said Sir. Okay, Francis. Francis nodded. Yes, sir. Good man. And action. Good evening, said Alice. He was blinking even faster. Good evening, said Francis. He wasn't nervous now. And who are you? Francis waited until the laughter had died down. Then, Francis, he said, quite loudly. Francis or Frances? Said Alice. Boy or girl? Alice, Sir warned. Boy, said Francis. Sure? Alice. Very sure, said Francis. I am, without doubt, a boy. And something wonderful happened. Everybody laughed. Francis had decided to make his classmates laugh, and he had done it. This was a great day. Francis laughed too, then stopped. So, said Alice, you're a boy. Yes. What sort of a boy? A most ordinary boy. Again he heard the laughter. Alice blinked and blinked and blinked. What's the most ordinary thing about you? She asked. My hands, said Francis. He showed them to her. And my feet? He held them up and put them back down on the floor. I have 2 of each, he said, which is very ordinary, I think you will agree. Yes, said Alice. And ears? Yes, said Francis. 2 of them. And eyes. And nostrils? Absolutely. Very ordinary. Yes, said Francis. He wanted the next question. He was enjoying himself so much. He even leaned forward, as if to catch the question as it came out of Alice's mouth. So, Francis, she said, where are you from? And Francis answered quickly, Peaky Peaky. The name was there in his head, suddenly, big and glowing. Everybody laughed. This time the laughter surprised Francis at first. There's no such place as Picky Picky, said Alice. Yes, said Francis, there is. No, there isn't, said Alice. Yes, there is, said Francis. He had forgotten all about Picky Picky, but it was the first place he'd thought of when Alice asked the question. There can't be, said Alice. It's too mad. What is it again? Picky Picky, said Francis. He liked saying it again. It was like seeing someone he loved from far away, coming closer. His father. He had not thought about his father in a long, long time. Sir, said a boy, Liam. What? There's no country in Africa called Picky Picky, said Liam. I know them all. Morocco, Tunisia, Libya. Thanks, Liam, said Sir. He looked at Francis. Where's Picky Picky, Francis? He asked. Do you want to talk about it? Francis turned to face the teacher. Yes, sir, he said. It is where I lived with my father. Before you came to Dublin? Yes, sir, said Francis. Is it the name of your village? Oh, no, sir, said Francis. We did not live in a village. A city, then, said Sir. There's no city in Africa called Picky Picky, sir, said Liam. I know them all. There's Alexandria and... Thanks, Liam, said Sir. So, Francis, is it a city? No, sir. Is it a country? Yes, sir. Francis heard several children groaning, and oh no, here we go again kind of groan. Boring. Someone else's turn. Quiet, said Sir loudly. He turned back to Francis. Where, Francis? Where's Picky Picky? Francis put a finger to the side of his head. In here, sir. In your head? Yes, sir, said Francis. In my head, and in my father's head. So it's an imaginary place? No, sir, said Francis. It is real. Then they heard Alice. Ahem. Everybody laughed. Francis laughed too. He turned back to face Alice. I am supposed to be the interviewer, you know, said Alice. It is a chat show, and I do have the biggest mouth in the class. You said that, sir. You're right, Alice, said Sir. You take over from here. Alice looked at the camera and blinked. Welcome back, she said. So, Francis, tell us a bit about Picky Picky. Picky Picky, said Francis. Whatever, said Alice. Tell us all about it. Francis sat up straight. My father knew many languages. He stopped. He started again. My father knows many languages, he said. It was 5 years since Francis had seen his father. One day, he said, a man passed us by on a motorbike, and my father told me the word for motorbike in 11 different languages. 11? Yes, said Francis. And the one that made me laugh was Peaky Peaky. So, said Alice, Picky Picky means motorbike? Yes, said Francis. In what language? Swahili, said Francis. You're telling us you lived in a country called Motorbike? Yes, said Francis. We made it up, my father and I, on the street. My father is the king, and I am the prince. Prince Francis. Yes, said Francis. When I was with my father, when we were together, we lived in Piki Piki. When he came home from work, when I woke up in the morning, he would say, "How is the prince of Piki Piki?" It was our country. We had our own money and our own food and everything. We made it up. Is your father still there? Francis nodded. Does he phone you? Francis shook his head. My mother says they will not let him phone. Who are they? The soldiers, said Francis. It was 5 years since Francis and his mother had had to leave their country in the time of shooting and fires. In those years, since he had come to Dublin, Francis had forgotten much. He had been a little boy when he left. He could not remember everything. It could not be expected. But he remembered, today, Piki Piki, the kingdom of the motorbike. He sat up. He'd remembered something else. In Piki Piki, he said, the mobile phones have wheels. Cool, said Alice. That makes sense. Yes, said Francis. You speak into the phone and put it on the ground. Then it goes away very quickly to whoever you are talking to and comes back with the message. Everybody laughed. They loved the idea of the wheelie mobile phones. Well, thank you, Francis, said Alice. Prince Francis, you mean? Said Liam. Cool. From that day on, everybody called him Prince Francis, and Francis was very pleased, because it meant he was their friend. Every time he heard the word prince, he thought of his father, the king, and it made him feel that his father was near. Francis was a prince now in his two homes, Piki Piki and Ireland, and his father was very proud of him. Article 15. We all have the right to belong to a country.